Ibrahim Agbola Gambari, CFR, Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, the Chief Host, the Chief of Defense Staff General L.E.O. Irabo, Nigerian Army Medal, Service Chiefs ably represented, Inspector General of Police ably represented, former Chiefs of Defense Staff, Chief of Army Staff, and former Inspector General of Police here present. The guest speaker, Ambassador Abdullahi Omaki, Your Royal Highnesses, heads of parastatals and security agencies, our erudite resource persons, members of the diplomatic corps, senior military officers serving and retired, Your Eminence, heads of religious bodies here present, distinguished participants, invited guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Abacha Hall of the National Defense College Abuja, venue for today's event, which is a one-day National Defense and Security Summit. I am Group Captain Ernest Richard Barsi, Director of Music, Nigerian Air Force. I shall be the lead master of ceremony, and I will be working with Commander Abdul Salam Sani, who is the Nigerian Navy Liaison Officer at the Directorate of Defense Media Operations. Today's summit, which is initiated by the Defense Headquarters, is a one-day program organized to provide a platform for discussion on a holistic approach to providing a comprehensive natural solution to the enormous security challenges bedeviling our dear country, Nigeria. The theme of the summit is promoting kinetic operations as a major plank for counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency in Nigeria. The special guest of honor, sir, distinguished participants, please permit me to highlight that due to the imperatives of widening the scope of participation in this all-important summit, we have participants attending the summit virtually via Zoom. May I, at this juncture, respectfully invite the Chief of Defense Training and Operations, Major General L.A. Adegboye, to give the welcome address. The seat top, sir.
The special guest of honor, the Honorable Minister of Defense, Major General B.S. Magashi, CFR, retired, the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, CFR, ably represented here, the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Monguno, retired, the Chairman, Senate, and House Committees on Defense, Army, Navy, and the Air Force, Honorable Ministers here present, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Chief of Defense Staff, General L.E.O. Irabo, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General I. Atairu, ably represented by the Chief of Policy and Plans, Army, Major General Ben Ahanatu, the Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral A.Z. Gambo, the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal I.O. Amao, the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Mohammed Abubakar, ably represented, former Chiefs of Defense Staff and Service Chiefs here present, the Chief of Defense Intelligence, Directors General of the National Intelligence Agency and Department of State Services, serving and retired generals here present, our erudite guest speaker for today's all-important occasion, Ambassador Abdullahi Omaki, Chairman, Council of Traditional Rulers and other distinguished traditional rulers here present, heads of paramilitary organizations here present, Directors General of Federal Government Parastatals here present, Commandants of Tri-Service and Service Institutions here present, Departmental Chiefs from the Defense and Services Headquarters, Chief Executives of Media Organizations here present, the Chairman, Christian Association of Nigeria, participants of this one-day National Defense and Security Summit, distinguished invited guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I am Major General L.A. Adegboye, the Chief of Defense Training and Operations. I am delighted on behalf of the Chief of Defense Staff to welcome the special guest of honor, special guests, our esteemed resource persons, distinguished invited guests and participants to the Defense Headquarters organized National Defense and Security Summit. This conference is convened by the Chief of Defense Staff at a time the security forces and the nation at large is grappling with several security threats such as banditry, cattle rustling, crude oil theft, kidnapping, insurgency, militancy, piracy, and terrorism, amongst others. These threats have made the national and sub-regional environment volatile, unstable, complex, and ambiguous for all stakeholders. Consequently, this situation can be mitigated by employing multidimensional measures such as the whole of government approach. This will, however, involve local and international stakeholders working in unison for the common and overarching objective of securing the different levels of national power. In this vein, the summit theme, promoting kinetic operations as a major plank for counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency in Nigeria, was coined to reflect the need for the input of diverse stakeholders in addressing current security realities. It should also be noted that the aforementioned theme is in tandem with the leadership philosophy of the Chief of Defense Staff, which is, in summary, to foster a professional armed forces capable of effectively meeting constitutional imperatives. Permit me at this juncture to mention that the outcome of the proceedings of this summit are expected to contribute towards enhancing the defense and national security architecture of Nigeria. Furthermore, it is expected to promote development, protect the populace, and enhance the well-being of the Nigerian society by taking all necessary measures to fulfill the mandate of the armed forces of Nigeria. On this note, I would like to again welcome our distinguished special guests of honor, esteemed resource persons, special guests, and participants to the National Defense Security Summit organized by the Defense Headquarters. I wish you all fruitful deliberations, and God bless.
The special guest of honor, sir, very distinguished guests, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. That was the welcome address by the Chief of Defense Training and Operations. At this juncture, may I most respectfully invite the Chief Host, Chief of Defense Staff, General L.E.O. Irabo, Nigerian Army Medal, to give his opening remarks. The CDS, sir.
Okay, right? Is it here or there? Here or there? All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. The special guest of honor, General Bashir Salih Magashi, the Minister of Defense. May I please ride on the very well established protocol. It is with a deep sense of appreciation that I welcome all the distinguished guests and participants to this one-day summit on national defense and security that has been organized by the Defense Headquarters. In particular, I welcome the special guest of honor, the person of Major General Bashir Salih, the Honorable Minister of Defense, under whose auspices the summit is being organized. Defense and security are universally considered as common but existential values that affect the entire nation. We therefore invited a range of leaders and eminent personalities in the Nigerian society to contribute to the narrative. I'm indeed honored to welcome the executive governors, of course, as earlier on announced by the Master of Ceremony. For reasons of the COVID protocols, they have joined us via Zoom and other social media platforms. So I'm honored to invite the governors, as well as respected political, traditional, religious, and community and opinion leaders in our society, as well as professional leaders in the security and defense sectors. Special welcome goes to the guest speaker, the moderator, and the discussants who are expected to guide our discussions very shortly. In view of the COVID-19 restrictions, a large number of persons have joined via Zoom, as I've just indicated a while ago. Thank everyone for your time and attention. Permit me also to say that your labor of patriotic love for the country shall not be in vain. Ladies and gentlemen, it is no longer news that the nation experiences a wide range of national security threats, including terrorism, insurgency, farmers-herders conflict, ethno-religious conflict, kidnapping, and banditry. These threats pose immediate and present danger to the corporate existence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, unity, stability, and sustainable development of the nation. Consequently, the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, has given a clear mandate for action. As such, I'm sure that not a few of our guests and participants will be wondering why Defense Headquarters is organizing the summit rather than overseeing the action in theater. First and foremost, let me state clearly that as a result of the presidential directive, the Armed Forces of Nigeria is already seized with the actions to immediately stabilize the situation. Our strategic objectives are manifold and include to neutralize non-state actors and other agents of violence in our communities, forests, and countryside, to stabilize the security situation across the nation, to facilitate law and order, and lastly, to provide the enabling environment for peace and development. These presuppose that the military would need support from other security agencies during the operations and would be required to give support to others at different stages of the internal security effort. Fundamentally, the use of military force, particularly in the homeland, is the most fiercely debated topic in public discourse, and people often take extreme and sometimes diametrically opposed positions. It is important, therefore, that the kinetic efforts enjoy the understanding and sustained support of stakeholders, key players, and the public and other significant audiences. This is the reason date for this summit. The specific objectives of the summit are to create functional awareness of the rationale for the kinetic efforts, promote buy-in and support of critical stakeholders in the polity, promote viable civil-military relations structures in support of the kinetic effort, promote possible deterrence from violent non-state actors, facilitate strategic communications and promote a cohesive information strategy on the kinetic approach, promote resource support for the kinetic approach, create awareness of the imperatives of post-kinetic actions to consolidate security, and lastly, consider other relevant measures to sustain security and stabilize the polity. The theme of the summit devolves from the extant approach and the main subject of insecurity. The approach is kinetic approach as a security instrument, while the main subject is underscored by the twin phenomena of terrorism and insurgency. Consequently, the theme is promoting kinetic operations as a major plank for counterterrorism and insurgency in Nigeria. We have carefully selected a guest speaker, a moderator, and discussants whose pedigree and resource endowments completely fit the bill and who are expected to provide the light and leading to the discussions. Given the caliber of the audience, I truly expect very perspective and robust discussions. It is on this note that I welcome all guests further, because there's no enough welcome one can express to this wonderful audience. That I welcome all guests and participants once again, knowing that in the history of Nigeria, the military as a foremost national institution has patriotically stood by the nation in its most trying times, and this period inclusive. This time will not be an exception, and we shall prevail. The summit is designed to quicken, support, and consolidate the kinetic effort. I therefore appeal to all participants to speak freely and candidly in the national security interest. At this juncture, let me register my profound gratitude to Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, for his inspiring and purposeful leadership of the Armed Forces of Nigeria. On behalf of officers, men and women of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, I pledge our unalloyed loyalty to the Commander-in-Chief and to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Shall be delivered. Fear and despair shall be extinguished from our land. I call on all, let courage rise with danger. Nigeria, thank you and God bless. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
That was the opening remarks by the Chief of Defense Staff. May I request a resounding round of applause for the CS as he takes his seat. To put the already established protocol in proper perspective, please permit me to update that the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Mungunu, is attending in person. Also, the Chief of the Air Staff, Air Marshal Oladayo Amao, is also here in person. Participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to listen to the remarks by the special guest of honor. I now have the honor and privilege to most respectfully invite the special guest of honor, the Honorable Minister of Defense, Major General Bashir Salihi Magashi, retired, for his remarks. The special guest of honor, sir.
Our Chief Host, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Leo Irabo, the Minister of Information and Culture, the Minister of Niger Development, the National Security Advisor, members of the Diplomatic Corps, service chiefs, and representative of the Inspector General of Police, heads of security agencies, our guest speaker for today, our eminent and highly revered traditional rulers, former Chief of Defense Staff and service chiefs here, Director General of the National Intelligence Agencies, Director General of the Federal Government Parastatals here present, the Chief of Defense Intelligence, the Chief Executive of Media Organization here present, the Chairman of Christian Association, the Chairman, National Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs, distinguished participants, distinguished invitees, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I'm indeed very delighted to witness the National Defense and Security Summit organized by the Defense Headquarters. I join the Chief of Defense Staff to welcome all the distinguished guests and participants here and online, and particularly the guest speaker and other distinguished and able discussants. This summit is coming at a sobering time in the life of our dear nation, a time when the merchants of violence are threatening to tear the very foundation of our nation, a time when diverse manifestations of security threats dot the landscape and impact on individuals, communities, and almost all the subnational entities in discertain ways, a time when fear and insecurity pervades the land, and at times when global indicators of national insecurity give room to serious concern. Physical security in Nigeria expectedly has both forward and backward linkages to different shades and forms of national security. Indeed, it is linked to political instability, economic and underdevelopment, social inequalities, food insecurity, and culminating in environmental degradation. The multiple dimensions of nature of insecurity in the country. In view of these realities, the federal government of Nigeria has over the years applied multilateral approach with contiguous neighbors a multidimensional approach and efforts domestically. In southern Nigeria, the security approach includes, but not limited to, the convening of various stakeholders' dialogues in the Niger Delta, mounting of single service and joint and special task forces, and the establishment of Niger Delta Development Commission. Also, the establishment of the Ministry of Niger Delta and the declaration of Mr. President's amnesty program for the repentant Niger Delta militants. Also, prescription of the independent people of Biafra, IPOD, and the establishment of the Multinational Marine Coordination Center Zone in the Gulf of Guinea. In the northern part of Nigeria, the security instruments applied include, but also not limited to, the mounting of different single-service, joint and special task forces, such as the Operation Lafia Dole, Operation Safe Haven, and Operation Hadron Daji, and the mounting of multinational joint task force with neighboring nation and operational cooperation with the civil joint task force. Other areas include the intervention at the establishment of Presidential Committee on the Northeast Initiative on Humanitarian Intervention, transformation and development efforts in that region, the establishment of the Northeast Developmental Commission, as well as a strategic and operational collaboration with the Safe School Initiative, which is a global coalition to protect schools. These efforts have been backed by enormous resource provisions through the budgetary appropriation and special interventions. I wish to state with a sense of responsibility and without any exaggeration that the result of these efforts have been mixed. Although the territories of the Niger Delta have recorded relative peace in recent times, there are manifest threats in the electorals and the prognostic which shows potential threats to re-insurgency militancy. In all other areas, there are causes for serious national security concern, ranging from terrorism, insurgency, farmers and herders conflict, ethno and religious conflicts, and lately, kidnapping and banditry. The federal government has inevitable responsibility to provide security to the people and the territories of Nigeria, and will not shirk on these responsibilities. The federal government is therefore single-mindedly committed to the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity and security of our nation. We will therefore leave no stone unturned to deliver on this national aspiration of our peoples and values. Admittedly, the presidential directive to the armed forces of Nigeria and other security agencies underscores the use of all instruments of power to stabilize the security situation in the nation and provide good governance, as well as promote peace, stability, and development. The focus and objective use of kinetic operations therefore becomes very obvious. The armed forces of Nigeria and other security agencies in league with strategic ministries, department, and agency of government, are critical to this security initiative. We are in a critical situation that requires the understanding, buy-in, support, and collaboration of important stakeholders and key players in the strategic option and to the national task. This is important to minimize distractions and maximize civil support in order to facilitate operational successes and missions outcomes. It is in this light that I consider this National Defense Security Summit organized by DHQ as both apt and timely, and therefore affirm and declare my support for it. The major theme and sub-themes of this summit resonate with the strategic aspiration of the federal government. I humbly, therefore, acknowledge the caliber of the speaker, the moderator, the discussants, and other distinguished participants. I register our high expectations from the summit. On this note, I wish to declare the summit open and wish you fruitful discussions. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
That was the remarks by the special guests of honor. May I request another round of applause for those kind words. The special guest of honor, very distinguished participant, to further put the protocol earlier established in perspective, permit me to add that the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs is in our midst, Senator Godswill Akpabio. Also, we have in our midst in person the Chief of Navy, Vice Admiral Awal Zubairu. May I also acknowledge that we have in our midst the Chairman, House Committee on Navy, Honorable Yusuf Gabdi. Having listened to the remarks by the special guest of honor, all is now set to take the one and only paper presentation for today's summit. The topic of the paper is Kinetic Operations as a major plank for counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency in Nigeria, issues, challenges, and perspective. To do justice to this paper is a seasoned retired career diplomat who has a very robust profile that may take 2 hours to read. In view of the need to gain time at today's proceedings, our guest presenter has graciously agreed that he be modestly introduced. I also understand the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources is here with us, as well as the former Chief of Defense Staff, Admiral I. Our guest president, Ambassador Abdullahi Azukutanyi Omaki. Ambassador Omaki has held several diplomatic appointments in notable countries in Africa and beyond. He has had an excellent career, padded with so many honors. Our guest presenter is currently the Director General, Savannah Center for Diplomacy and Development. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, please join me with a round of applause as I invite Ambassador Omaki to the podium to deliver his paper.
control from there, sir?
Yes.
Okay. It's on.
Yeah. Okay. The special guest of honor, the Honorable Minister for Defense, the Chief of Defense Staff, and I would also like to crave your kind indulgence to limit myself to the list of protocol that has been established. Permit me first to start by offering profound congratulations and the service chiefs on their well-deserved appointments. Appointments or invitations to serve in different capacities in government require prayers for God's hands to manifest in the hearts of those provided the opportunities to serve their country and citizens. You have my sincere prayers, therefore, for God's guidance to the onerous responsibilities that we have been invited to discharge, so that our people will feel and have a satisfying sense of safety and survival across our country. Let me also thank the CDS for the presentation, which will be discussed by eminent panelists that are here today. In a country of about 200 million people, we are indeed honored for the recognitions to make these contributions, which we hope can make substantial difference to efforts to reclaim our country from the multiple challenges of insecurity, which are clear threats to Nigeria's corporate existence. Taking a look at this audience here today and those joining us online, I believe that this is the moment looking for. It is the moment we have been waiting has come for us to confront each other directly and situate where we are in terms of these multiple threats that have hindered Nigeria's progress. In the audience, you made reference to the frontline state governors, to politicians, to military services, and especially the heads of agencies, to some representatives of civil society organizations, importantly, the traditional rulers. These are indeed critical stakeholders to Nigeria's safety and welfare. The presidential directives that we had so clearly at the commencement of the services of the Chief of Defense Staff and the other service chiefs are so clear and very unambiguous that our nation, where we are today, has no other way but to have this decent and frank conversation with each other and begin to make progress. I have no doubt in my mind that seated where we are today and online, we can end these multiple challenges, and it has to start from today. A little over 2 years ago, precisely in December 2019, Savannah Center, where I was executive director before taking up my present post, had convened a roundtable discussion on the state of insecurity in our country. Drawing from the contributions of a broad range of stakeholders who participated in that event, the center issued what it referred to as pathway to ending the insecurity in the Northeast
and other security threats to Nigeria's safety and survival. At that event, participants discussed the challenges of winning the war on insurgency, as well as various threats to peace, to the peace which our country badly needed then, and still remains so today. On the next slide, please. Slide 4. What we did at the Savannah Center in December 2019 and what we are doing here today are similar. Here today, however, we are taking the conversation a little further by bringing in the frontline states. This is critical. Very often, when challenges occur, everybody references the federal government. The federal government is not the nation. The federal government has 3 tiers of government: the federal, the state, and the local government. And everybody, and each of these tiers must make contributions. And I'm delighted that we have some of these governors. Consider the theme of this conversation today: kinetic approaches, operations as a major plan for counter-terrorism in Nigeria. Issues, challenges, and prospects to be quite appropriate. It captures the basic intersections between the need to stabilize security in Nigeria, the place of the law and justice, and after attaining stability, and indeed addressing the issue of poor governance, which, in my view, is the principal irritant that promotes the threats to security. Slide 5. The scope of this paper is subdivided into 8 with recommendations 9 and conclusion briefly. You have it on the slide 5 and 6. Background. The distinguished participants, the topic invites us to assess kinetic actions or operations as a major plan to redressing the dislocation of our nation's security. The emphasis here is on major. P.A.L. Duchesne of the Amsterdam Center for International Law, in a 2014 article titled Non-Kinetic Capabilities, Complementing the Kinetic Prevalence, to defines kinetic military operations as the targeted application of military force. Targeted application of military force based on the release or concentration of kinetic energy against objects with primary or lethal effects in the physical domain. That's a quotation. Kinetic operations, slide 7, are often associated with huge collateral damages, especially to the civilian population. And this is so because the war on terror and insurgency is not a conventional war that clearly demarcates the enemy. Public communities, nations, and even at international fora have often dominated discussions on the use of kinetic actions. So the debate is not just peculiar to Nigeria, it's worldwide. How do we make a distinction between heavy military usage of power as against that which can be said to be appropriate? The thin line often causes the confusion that we have, including in our country today. There is a general reluctance for the use of kinetic operations because of the collateral impact on the civilian population. We are therefore finding a balance to the proportionate use of force to contain, stamp out, and deter. To contain, stamp out, and deter terrorists and insurgents as well as other armed groups, before a return to soft power approach is possible. That is where the dilemma is. Where we are as a nation today with respect to all the levels of the threats to our national security necessarily requires the application of kinetic operations to reclaim the space and provide our people their assurances of their safety and survival. And that is why this one-day summit is important. It canvasses for support, and whether we like it or not, some level of force will have to be used. What you may describe as proportionate may be described by others as not such a proportionate application. But we have to do that because where we are 12 years after the insurgency in the Northeast and several other years with a multiplication of threats in different parts of the country require that we reclaim the territory, the Nigerian territory first. And kinetic approach cannot be exempted. Slide 8. I recall also that a series of conferences were held in 2018 to 2019, which involved ministers of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, the member states of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, in collaboration with the UNDP, the African Union, the EU, to discuss and isolate the badly needed stabilization efforts to address wide-ranging threats to national and sub-regional security in the Sahel region and the Lake Chad Basin area. Those conferences were also faced with the dilemma of determining what should amount to appropriate use of force that can halt and contain terrorist activities, violent extremists, and insurgencies generally. I recall that in one of such conferences in Jamina, S was then the force commander of the multinational joint task force there. He drew the attention of the participants to this dilemma when he retorted to that, what should the multinational joint task force deliver first? Kinetic operations, soft force, or economic stabilization? Nobody responded. I understood that you were clearly disappointed, and perhaps the UN and the EU especially were reluctant to offer sizable support for security component as opposed to the willingness to invest in the economic stabilization plans and other areas of humanitarian needs. Their reluctance was because they were not sure that the forces, the multinational joint task forces, were going to be able to apply force in a proportionate manner. Use of force in a proportionate manner has never happened anywhere in the world. There are always collateral damages. Clearly, therefore, there cannot be an economic activities or set of economic activities without security that guarantees the unhindered movement of goods and services and people. So, in our own country, we have that challenge as well, that in trying to limit the collateral damage to civilians, we must admit that the use of force is necessary. Slide 10. The case you passionately made, the CDS and Force Commander then, for collectivity appraisal by stakeholders as necessary element for both kinetic and soft approaches to coexist is a fundamental principle that should guide our discourse today and beyond. The philosophy of the CDS on what direction to act neatly fits the underlisted two broad concepts which promote inclusivity and ownership, hence the determination by all parties to ensure success. And this is very well captured even from the opening statements we had. A whole of the government approach and a whole of the society approach. We have combined in this hall today the two. We have members representing the civil society, we have the traditional institutions, representative of the traditional institutions. I believe we have some private sectors operators here, and we have the media, and then we have the government institutions that are here. So that's why I said at the beginning that if at the end of this conference we are not able to make progress, then Nigeria should hold all of us responsible. We can end this crisis if we want the crisis to end today. And it is within our power and reach, because we are the opinion leaders in our various communities and societies where we come from. And we have to do this. We don't have to leave it to the military establishments alone. The military establishments are primarily Nigerians and human beings like us. But all of us have contributions to make. The state of insecurity, slide 11. The state of insecurity in Nigeria has been presented by the previous interventions. The resurgent insurgency in the Northeast, banditry, cattle wrestling, herder farmer clashes, and kidnapping for ransom in the Northwest and North Central, cultism, communal clashes, resource control agitations, as well as the IPOB challenges in the south of Nigeria, continue to threaten peace and security of the nation. Security agencies seem not able to keep pace with wide public demands for better protection of lives and properties of citizens. This may have contributed to the agitations for state police or community policing, leading to the emergence of regional security outfits, such as the Amotekun in the southwest, the Shege Kafasa in the northwest, or Dinigwe in the southeast. Today, the wave of insecurity across the country has regrettably increased, with devastating consequences on national unity and development. Slide 12. According to Timothy Noah, I'm coming back to the imperatives and the urgency of kinetic action. In an article titled Birth of Washington World, published online in a Slate magazine on November 20, 2002, the word kinetic in relation to military action was first introduced by the famous American journalist and author Bob Woodward in his book, Bush at War, published in 2002 in the aftermath of the 9/11. The 9/11, Woodward wrote, "For many days, the war cabinet had been dancing around the basic question: how long could they wait after September 11 before they started going kinetic, as they often termed it, against Al-Qaeda in a visible way?" That was a question. Going kinetic, as noted by Woodward, in this case, meant full military action from air, land, full military action. So perhaps the same question can be asked: when will Nigeria go kinetic? Is the nation prepared for that? I think we should, if we want to reclaim our country. A pivotal point in the American government's war of terror was the joint resolution of the United States Congress, which was passed 1 week after September 11. Here, too, our National Assembly has a part. I'm happy that the House Committee representative on Navy is here. I think he can take the message to his colleagues. The National Assembly has a role to play. That resolution authorizes the President of the United Armed Forces against those nations, organizations he determined, planned, authorized, committed, or aided a terrorist attack that occurred on September 11. We can do the same in Nigeria. We have had challenges for over a dozen years, and we must trace how all of this evolved. Slide 14. This has set the stage for the invasion. The American resolution, the Congress resolution in the US set the stage for the invasion of Afghanistan and the massive deployment of the U.S. military in that country at that time. As of February 2019, according to the U.S. Department of Defense, more than 775,000 American troops had been deployed to Afghanistan to prosecute the war on terror. Regrettably, we don't have that number here, but whatever number that we will have to make some drastic decisions. Through kinetic action, the American military succeeded in ousting the Taliban power in Afghanistan, and by so doing, caused severe disruption in the command and control of the terrorist networks operating in the country under the protection of the Taliban. Another prominent case of kinetic action in counterterrorism and counterinsurgency that preceded 9/11 by several decades was the involvement of the British Army in Northern Ireland under Operation Banner. The operation lasted from 1969 to 2007, and it is said to be the longest continuous deployment in the history of the British military. The main role, slide 17, the main role of the military Operation Banner was to support the police. According to the UK Ministry of Defense, in a 2006 document titled Operation Banner, an analysis of military operation in Northern Ireland, military support to the police was mainly by the British Army. The Royal Air Force, Royal Navy, and Royal Marines all acted in support of the Army. What we may call a whole of the government approach, a whole of the security services approach. That's, I think, we need to do more at home in terms of a whole of a government approach. Slide 18. The UK Defense Secretary in 2006 issued a statement where he identified 3 levels of support that the British Armed Forces provided police in Northern Ireland. The first one was routine support. This includes police in carrying out normal police duties in areas of terrorist threat, which involves assistance to the police where they have insufficient resources of their own. And the third one, the specialist support, which includes activities such as bomb disposal. Olusosa, in a 2018 article entitled "The Growing Role of the Military in Counterterrorism in Southeast Asia," noted that the military forces have gained a prominent role in counterterrorism in countries such as Indonesia and Philippines, where terrorist groups and radicalized individuals have been active. Sosa further noted that in both countries there was substantial popular support for the involvement of the military in counterterrorism, due in part to the perceptions of the inadequacies of the national police. The case is the same here. We don't have national police that has the capacity and capability to be able to protect the rest of us. So the military necessarily has to have some substantial role to assist in carrying out this badly needed security activity. In the case of Nigeria, experience shows that the military, with its air power and specialized weaponry, is best equipped to handle counterterrorism and counterinsurgency roles to secure the country. The tactics used by terrorists and insurgents, which involve extreme brutality against unarmed civilians and hit-and-run attacks on soft targets, have made it imperative and indeed urgent for the Nigerian military to adopt kinetic action in their counterterrorism and counterinsurgency efforts. One of the lessons from the Philippines and Indonesia is that kinetic action can be successfully employed to neutralize terrorists and insurgents. It should, however, be part of a strategy that is intelligence-driven. Should be intelligence-driven. Issues and impacts of kinetic operations. Slide 21. In a 2009 article entitled Counterinsurgency, Human Rights and the Law of Armed Conflict, published in Human Rights Brief, the former Italian Army officer, Federico Spiretto, identified three main factors that distinguish counterinsurgency operations from conventional operations. The first one is a tendency for operations to be conducted among civilians. Troops are generally quartered in urban areas and military outposts, and military outposts are in rural areas. Number two, insurgents avoid direct military confrontation and use unconventional means such as terrorist attacks. Number three, insurgents are sometimes hard to distinguish from peaceful civilians until combat flares up. These factors, slide 22, underscore the risk that counterinsurgency operations pose for non-combat civilians and the need to mitigate the risk. Avoiding the collateral damage then becomes a major consideration by the military. How to walk that thin line, I believe the military experts, together with the level of intelligence that they may have analyzed, should be able to provide proper guidance on this. Slide 23. The rules of engagement in kinetic operations should be clearly defined and strictly adhered to. They must reflect an abiding respect for the law of armed conflict, also known as the law of the international law, humanitarian law. This law applies not only to conflict states, but also to conflicts within states. According to the literature, there are 6 fundamental principles of the international humanitarian law. The distinction between civilians and combatants, and between civilian objects and military objectives. 2, the prohibition to attack persons not directly engaged in hostilities. Number 3, prohibition to inflict unnecessary suffering. Number 4, the principle of necessity. Number 5, the principle of proportionality. And number 6, the principle of humanity. I believe that if the Nigerian military decides it wants to go kinetic, and I suggest we should, they have enough cover under international humanitarian law. Slide 25. These principles will guide kinetic operation in counterterrorism and counterinsurgency. Where the military does not abide by these principles, there is likely to be hostility from local communities, resulting in loss of public support. That is important, and we have to bear that in mind. And having in our midst today, physically here and online, the traditional rulers, I believe that this point can be very well made and can be well taken back to their... It will be recalled that at a time, Borno State elders held a press conference requesting the exit of the military from Maiduguri, then considered to be the ground zero in the fight against Boko Haram. Several accounts from ordinary citizens in Borno State have given reasons why they do not volunteer information to the military, one of which is military high-handedness. I recall also one of the stories told by a market trader in Maiduguri to a field research team from Savannah Center. He said Boko Haram will throw an improvised explosive device on a passing military convoy, and the reprisal response from the military within the neighborhood will be catastrophic. Boko Haram will then use that episode to convince the people that the military hates them. So it becomes a win-win situation for Boko Haram. Perceptions matter. In this case, the perception in Borno State, the perception of the Borno elders was that the military was not serving their interests. And it is not the case. The military made supreme sacrifices to continue to keep Nigeria together, but they may not have done enough because there are also other areas and other evidences that have been used against military, not properly focusing on war, but perhaps focusing on other aspects, perhaps economic interests. So, since perceptions matter, Boko Haram win by attacking the military, and the same Boko Haram win by eroding public support for the military. We should guard against this, and it is something that has to be taken seriously if we have to go kinetic. This is an important reason why the impact of kinetic action on the people and indeed the nation needs to be carefully evaluated. Challenges and prospects of kinetic action. Slide 28. From the foregoing, it can be deduced that various challenges face the Nigerian military in the adoption of kinetic operations. Civil society organizations, human rights campaigners, and the international community have at different times expressed concern about the counterinsurgency activities in the military and how they impact human rights of people in areas of conflict. We may recall, following the sustained campaign of Amnesty International and other international domestic human rights groups, where they considered to be human rights abuses by the Nigerian military in the fight against Boko Haram, the President established an administrative inquiry to examine the conduct of the armed forces. A similar inquiry was held by the Kaduna State government to investigate the clash between the Nigerian army and members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria in Zaria. The military needs to learn from these episodes and be aware of the impact they may have on public support for their activities. There is a thin line between public support and public apathy. Where the people do not support the efforts of the military, operations become difficult. Promoting civil-military relations on the kinetic approach is one of the stated aims of this summit. The armed forces would need the buy-in of the people to achieve this. Despite the challenges, slide 31, there are prospects for the kinetic operations to be successfully applied. Nevertheless, kinetic operations on their own will not be enough, but immediate and sustained development programs. And that is why I thought the governors of the frontline state participating in this is important for them to know that whatever actions they take as state governments will impact peace, stability, and development of their state. This was the approach used by the American military in Iraq and Afghanistan, as noted by foremost counter-insurgency expert, Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence of the British Army. Irregular warfare is far more intellectual than a bayonet charge. We need a whole of government and a whole of society approach to counter terrorism and counter insurgency. Slide 32, the role of the media in crisis situation. The media is an indispensable partner to state, as well as national and global institutions. In crisis situations, such as being witnessed in Nigeria, the media needs to be particularly courted as an ally that can present a balanced account of such a crisis. In the case of the Northeast and Northwest and other challenges across our country today, regrettably, the media campaign and its propaganda appear to be in the hands of insurgents or the criminal armed groups. Neither the federal government nor the military or any of the security outfits is using the media in such a manner that correctly tunes the narratives of the crisis in favor of the state. In my view, it is not only important, but crucial for the media components of our security agencies to work in collaborations with the regular media to ensure a narrative of the crisis we face to be presented without injury to the state. What we have currently reflect in the traditional and online media are stories that clearly portend greater danger to the state. Lack of periodic interface with the media that strengthens the adversary. We must fight and occupy the narrative stage at all times. Where no information is easily and officially available, any news will be believed. And that is what we have in the media space. And I believe, and I know, that all the security agencies have the media components embedded in them. They need to work out a very collaborative approach that can enhance higher national security for the nation. Slide 33, building national consensus around security threats to the nation. It is a matter of regret that Nigerians are yet to accept, for example, the insurgency in the Northeast as a national challenge, requiring concerted efforts by the governments to rally support of the political class, religious leaders, the academics, and indeed the crucial support of the critical mass of our people behind common national causes. Oftentimes, we hear people say, oh, there's a problem in the Northeast. If you're from the Southwest or the Southeast, it doesn't bother you. When we had the war in 67 to 70, you said the war, and if you are from the North, it probably doesn't bother you so much. When you have the OPC challenge, it was the same. When you have now Northwest, North Central, people just refer to them Northwest, North Central. When will each of these crises become Nigerian crises and Nigerian problems, and therefore requiring that all of us key into looking or searching for viable solutions to redress them? It is important that we adopt a non-partisan approach to galvanize such an all-round support for and ownership of various challenges to our nation. The foreign heroes, for example, in the very different frontiers of war, are probably disposed of without adequate concern that these are people that have put up their lives so that the rest of us can live. We need to treat them with more honor, more dignity, even as we bid them farewell. And I think creating national cemeteries across the theaters of war will be important to make that connection and to ensure that the leadership, political leadership in those theaters, when such burials will be conducted, are brought together with their families, so that the nation will have an opportunity to say to the foreign heroes a big thank you for the sacrifices that they have made, but more importantly, for people to connect, the people of the various theaters of war, to connect that people came from far and wide. Those who have paid the prices with their lives are not necessarily sons and daughters of those same areas, so that we can make this case for the national unity and the case for being each other's best keeper. Governance challenges in Nigeria's democracy. Regrettably, this is where we have a lot of challenges. And those challenges are not going to end unless and until the politicians and the political leaders in the states and local government embrace what it is to lead their state. Nigerian democracy is not working as it has failed to impact significantly on the lives of citizens. The impact of the government is limited to the federal activities, federal authorities. Anywhere you go is federal. Anywhere you go is federal. Anything you see is federal. What about the states? They have budgets, they have allocations. Local government has virtually disappeared. We don't hear. So something has to be done. Something has to be done because it is at the local communities that some of these crises first emanate. And then you have absence of local authorities to manage some of these at that local level. And then we have traditional institutions, traditional rulers that are there, catered for by government, and they don't have visible responsibilities that can make them impact on their societies. And they have been doing this very well before 1976. Something went wrong fundamentally, and we need to reclaim that. We need to go back and see how we can use every of our resources together, because together we are bigger. If we begin to downgrade the level of our importance and contributions, then we'll continue to face these challenges endlessly, and we don't pray for that. There must be greater synergy between the federal government and the state governments so that both there will be visible deliveries of the dividends of democracy across board. The persistence of huge unemployment and lack of opportunities for meaningful sources of income creates a pool of youth that can be recruited into criminal gangs, including reinforcement to the terrorist groups. These same groups are into drugs, and which complicates where we are. The concept notes for this summit list one of the objectives of this event as the consideration, objectives of this event, the consideration of other measures to sustain and stabilize the polity. In this regard, I would like to make the following recommendations for integration into a kinetic approach that can serve our own local challenges. And a whole of a government approach, as well as a whole of society approach, so that together we can very meaningfully reappraise what needs to be done and count on the various stakeholders for their support. The first recommendation is the cognitive operations. Efforts to win the hearts and minds of the people should be intensified. It must be paramount. Community level development committees should be created to interface with the military. The Army Corps of Engineers should be tasked with certain responsibility that can see clear involvement of military rather than just the shooting part of their presence. The intra and interagencies rivalries. This is the most important. We are all gathered here in a whole of the government approach. What is critical is all the layers that have been given the responsibility of managing our national security must be seen in synergy with each other. Regrettably, we haven't seen that in a very long while. There have been chaotic relationships as a result of that lack of synergy. Everybody wants to occupy his own space. Occupying your position of national dilemma does not help. It worsens the scenario. And we need, for once, the imperative of those actors has that the responsibilities they have is responsibility for the nation, and their their own agency is just to manage those issues that they have the capability and capacity and attributes to be able to process. But in doing this, there must be a clearly designated coordinator who can share this information across board, and especially across the theater of battle. Without this information getting to where they are needed, they are useless because they don't protect anybody. And we need that whatever investment we make around security agencies are reflected in the level of cohesion and stability and safety that each and every Nigerian gets. We need a clear coordinator to manage these responsibilities. Intelligence operations, the police, DSS, military intelligence should penetrate communities to identify insurgent and terrorist networks to provide real-time intelligence is required. This must then be aligned with the firepower. You can't make a case for kinetic approach if you don't also have appropriate intelligence for utilization at the tactical level. And I think all of us, including the civil society organizations, can work together and also provide some level of input here to the security agencies. We tried that at the level of Savannah Center when we carried out some limited model test operation in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe in 2018. And it worked. We didn't spend much money. Governors can get some of it. Chiefs of staff can also do the same. They have this service intelligence, but they need to go outside service intelligence to relate with community to be able to get on top of the kind of information they need. How come the so-called armed groups that have taken up arms against the nation are managing this layer, this aspect of relationship better than the organized military services? We should ask ourselves some questions there. Stability of operations. This should be aimed at restoring social order and development. It should involve peace building, also be done more creatively using the frontline states, because without the frontline states, we are not likely to be able to get beyond the level of rhetorics. The areas that have been reclaimed, people don't have means of livelihood to go back to, and you ask them to go back to their communities to do what? So that becomes a problem. So there must be synergy in how we progress from one point to the other. The perception that the military has been steadily leaning in the direction of getting more involved in economic activities, especially in the frontline states of crisis, must be reversed through purposeful citizens, through community engagements and propaganda. The use of prominent entertainers, singers, and actors can easily pass more positive messages on behalf of our military, even to make the case to promote the use of kinetic approach, and to also drive into the media the necessity for them to put nation first before other interests in terms of narratives that they push out. I believe we can use some of these artists to be able to do this better. The external support. I have deliberately skipped talking about the diplomatic angle of this external support here because I think it's a discussion that requires some level of, some other level other than this. So perhaps at an appropriate time, we can give a position on this. But our problems are not only internally oriented. We have factors to worry about from the external dimension. And we have to look at that vis-a-vis whatever we need to do. The external component of our counterterrorism and counterinsurgency efforts is of crucial importance. The multinational task force should be made to work. Our porous borders are weak points in our defense. We must work with our neighbors to strengthen the security of our borders. Now, before I go to the last recommendation, it is important to also look at the issue of equipment, the issue of technology. And how do we put that side by side, the concern that the troops level at our disposal for all the services are not what a nation of 200 million people should have. So where do we go from here? You need to have a proper balance by going into equipments that are designed for maximum precision. And the use of that can help balance our shortcomings in the areas of troops level at our disposal. And we also need we're talking of these troop levels now, not just necessarily about the military in the theaters of war, but also for the police and for the reforms in the police. I understand there are some work going on in the reforms. I don't know how far or how fast we can get to that, but we need that to be done. But we also need a civil defense that manages our critical assets and protect our critical buildings and all that, to also expand, commensurate with the responsibilities that have been placed before them across the country. So the concern for me here is that we need to also move into the use of science and technology in terms of how we can execute this war faster and more precisely, and perhaps win the war as quickly as we need to. Item 6, the National Intelligence Agency must be supported to identify the external sources of arms and funding used by terrorists and insurgents. Disrupting the funding and arms supply is of vital importance in securing the country and stabilizing the polity. Both government as well as all the security agencies need this synergy to be able to do this, because if we're able to isolate where these arms are coming from or where the resources are coming into, apart from the kidnapping that they are making a lot of money currently, they also have other sources of income. But if we can also stop kidnapping, then it's a major plus. And we can do this very easily using technology. Using technology, it's achievable, can be done. Other countries have done it. Other countries have also sought the assistance of Nigeria to be able to pick out their national, and they were using high tech. We need to go in that direction. If they can come to Nigeria, do so, move out without a single shot fired, no casualty, and they picked their target and left, and complained also that that area had no visible security. So that should worry us. We are talking of numbers now, but we're also talking of science and tech. And it's important for us to carry the final, and it's my conclusion. Counterterrorism and counterinsurgency efforts in Nigeria certainly shall benefit from having kinetic operations as a major plank. This has worked in other countries and can be made to work here too. The state of insecurity in Nigeria has become such that kinetic operations are not only imperative, but urgent. The prospects for kinetic operations must, however, be balanced against the challenges. It should not be a case of solving one problem and creating another. The war on insurgency and terrorism is not one the military can win alone. And that is why all of us in this hall today, and a number of us are online. The representatives, like I said at the beginning, those who are here today, if we lock all of us out, we are not going out until we're able to find a solution to the plethora of challenges facing this country in terms of insecurity. We will find. We have to just get that directive, that we are all arrested here and to find a solution and to resolve the problem. The war on insurgency is not one that the military can win alone. All of us. Securing the country and stabilizing the polity is a task for all Nigerians. The support of the public is therefore crucial to the success of kinetic operations. This makes it necessary for the leadership of the armed forces to promote robust civil-military relations to win the hearts and minds of citizens. All hands must be on deck to embrace the whole of the government and as well as the whole of the society approach to ending terrorism and all other criminal groups in our country. I thank you for your attention.
The special guest of honor, distinguished participants, may I request another resounding round of applause for our guest speaker for a wonderful, excellently presented. Thank you, sir. The guest of honor, sir, before we move to the next item on the program, bearing the importance of today's summit, we have some very important personalities that we just cannot but mention their presence. Permit me to acknowledge the presence of the chairman, the House Committee on Defense, Honorable Baba Jimmy Benson. We are also privileged to have a very distinguished security expert in our midst. Please, let's welcome Dr. Ona Ekumu. Thank you, sir. Guest of honor, sir. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, we shall be observing the group. Also, to add to the importance of today's event and to lay support on what we're doing here today, we are privileged to have with us the Executive Governor of Delta State, His Excellency Ifeanyi Okowa. Please, let's appreciate His Excellency. Thank you, sir. We shall be observing the proceeding for group photograph, which will take place at the National Defense College photograph stand. The location is through this door to my right. The ushers will be on hand to guide participants who are not very familiar with the location. And we shall be progressing for the group photograph in reverse order, beginning from the rear, while our VVIPs wait a little for the photograph stand to be set. Also, after the group photograph, we will be proceeding for tea break. The tea break is going to hold occasions. We have sorry for that short break. For the tea break, it will be observed at the first floor foyer and the ground floor foyer. Participants are please requested to make their way through the rear door of this auditorium. For the VVIPs, they will be served at the first floor foyer, which is upon exiting the rear door, you make your way right. The other very distinguished participants will be served at the ground floor foyer. You make your way left and descend the staircase to the ground floor foyer. The special guest of honor, sir, may I crave your indulgence to announce that distinguished participants from the rear begin to proceed to the photograph stand as we observe these two activities on the program. Thank you. We will observe these two activities for just 30 minutes, thereabout. We're expected to please assemble back in the hall at exactly 11:30 hours. Once again, we're expected back in the hall at exactly 11:30 hours for the continuation of proceedings. Thank you.